Hello and welcome back to the Ever-Changing World podcast. I'm your host, Ava Zanetti, and in today's episode, I wanted to do a similar episode to the very first one I've ever done. If you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend, even though the title of the episode is New Year's Resolutions. And let me make sure I get this title right so you guys could go look it up, so you guys could go listen to it. And building habits. I think it's something similar to that. Even though it's, it says New Year's resolutions, in that episode as well, I say you don't need to be in the new year to make resolutions. I think it is the best time to make resolutions whenever you have an idea. Personally, for me, whenever I have an idea that sparks my mind that I think I can create something, I love to create things, to be able to make an impact on the area around me, right? Even with this podcast, even though, of course, not like tons of people listen to it, right? It's a few people, I still feel that even with that, I'm able to make some sort of impact with the voice I have, and, I just want to keep doing that. And, whenever I have an idea to do something, right, I have all these different projects that I work on all the time, I always, end up doing it right when I think about it. And I think that's one of the best traits that I think I personally have. I have a lot of drive and momentum. And that's definitely something that you don't have to be born with. I mean, you can obviously build that, but I think that is one of the most powerful traits, is to be able to have an idea, but not only have an idea, but execute them, and execute them very well and thoroughly, and devote your time and dive into something that means a lot to you and matters a lot to you. So, that episode I talk a lot about how to make habits and how to form them, and kind of the history behind forming habits, and it was my first episode as well, so I wasn't as comfortable on a microphone. I think I did okay, though, so I think you would definitely enjoy that episode, though it was funny timing because it was right after the new year that I made that episode, and I did have the idea for that podcast, kind of right after New Year's. So even though I do say, obviously, it doesn't need to be timed, I definitely think that, it was kind of ironic that I do say that now, and I recognize that. But in today's episode, I'm kind of connecting back to that past episode. You don't have to listen to it, of course, it's a great episode, so go ahead and listen to it. But I wanted to connect that episode to today's episode, because today's episode is, again, me kind of speaking from experience, maybe sitting on my soapbox, standing on my soapbox, if you will. But it's me talking about kind of a human issue, in a way, and something that really heavily affects our daily lives, and how we interact with people, and how we interact in the world. So I really wanted to dive into the topic of the fear of failure. Not sure what I'm going to name this episode yet, probably that. But the fear of failure, or failure in and of itself, and how to deal with failure. This, again, kind of connects back to last week's episode. Again, go ahead and check it out. It's called The Reality of College Admissions. In this episode, since I am obsessed with researching universities and colleges and how to do everything, that's all I've been doing for the past few years and always, I really dove into talking about college admissions and really what the scope of it is, especially in the United States, is where I focus my lens on, since that's where I want to go to school. And I really focus on explaining, these different things and really how to set yourself best for these colleges, what these universities want. So the reason why I mentioned this episode and what I talked about in that episode is because failure is a huge part of college admissions. In college admissions, I'm sure, let's say you apply to 20 schools, which, that's getting to the number of schools people are applying more and more to. So you apply to 20, you're probably going to get rejected from half. If you have a pretty average application, maybe even more. It really depends what schools you apply to as well. But definitely if you're applying to a bunch of reach schools, so those schools are like the really hard ones to get into, you'll be rejected from a lot of them. And it's not to say you're a bad person or anything. You're just going to get rejected. And that's kind of why I want to talk about failure, this fear of failure, and how to deal with failure. Because I think failure is something that is innate in our human nature. Obviously, it is, and I'll explain why that is as well. And, it might seem self-explanatory, but it's important to note why we have these instincts in the first place, to understand why different things in life stress us out a lot. So, when I'm connecting back to, and I will connect back to college admissions, I think it's really important to put everything in life in perspective. And, that is another one of it, too. And failure, I think I see a lot of people around me, too. They cripple at the thought of failure. An example is from today. I am a grade 10 student in Ontario, and we have an Ontario literacy test. So, and I'm in Canada as well, if you don't know where Ontario is. What this literacy test is you have to pass the test to graduate high school. You can take it, happens every year. You can take it, every year if you need to. Keep taking it until you graduate, but it is mandatory to graduate. Though the interesting thing about this test, it is not a 50% pass rate. It is a 75% pass rate, I believe. I'm going to double check that because, I'm curious now as well. But this pass rate is really relatively high, especially for a test like this, right? In Ontario, we have something else called EQAO. That test is to test teachers how to... The test basically, it's grade 3, 6, and 9. And it tests students, but really it's to see how the teachers are teaching, if they're teaching well. So a lot of the times, when you're in those 3, 6, and 9 grades, your teachers are just teaching you stuff so they get a good mark on EQAO. I don't go to a school where we do EQAO grade 9 anyways anymore, so I didn't have to worry about that. But it is definitely, it's similar to one of those tests, but those tests don't count for marks. This test doesn't technically count for a mark, but it matters because it means you will graduate or not graduate. And again, we are mandated to take 4 credits of English, so 1 each year of your high school career. But, again, they want this extra test. So it is a pretty high passing score, and it says, let me see. What score do you need? You need a 75%, sorry. So you need a 75%, which is really high. But there's 400 points and you need a 300 or 400, which doesn't seem as unrealistic when you put it in that way. Anyways, I'm mentioning this, and I went on that little rant there, because, the fear of failure is something I saw so much today, when I was walking around school. Again, another reference point. I haven't been at school for 2 weeks. Nobody else has in my school, because my school does 2 weeks of March break, and we were finally back today. We were maskless, all of that, or a lot of people chose to wear masks, but that's another topic of conversation. So, a lot of people were talking, and the literacy test has been buzzing around the school in the grade 10 community, because it's something that we're doing in a few weeks' time. I think I have mine in a week or 2. Or maybe not maybe 3 weeks. But this is buzzing around because a lot of people are worried, and it's, again, this fear of failure that I could see seething through these people, because they kept asking, what if I fail? What if I fail? What if I fail? And in my head, failing wasn't even an option. To me, I was like, well, if I failed, then I'd take it in grade 11, and I would actually study for it. But I'm not really that worried. I think I can read fine, right? In my mind, right? I'm like, for me, when I look at these things, I look relative, right? I say, okay, I'm doing great in English right now. I got 90s in English, right? Somewhere in there. So, to get a 75 on this exam, I just gotta sit there. I just gotta really read the questions, and I'll be fine, right? I just need to pass. So, that's my attitude going into this, and going into a lot of exams like that. But I could definitely see a lot of people freaking out, and a lot of people were freaking out that they were going to fail. I kind of thought, I was like, there's really no way you're going to fail. Our school is doing practice questions, and I'm like, it doesn't seem that difficult. But again, that fear of failure is something I could see in everybody today, and I thought I need to tell kind of this story, to talk about, I guess, exams and talk about these different things, and set the scene, because it really is a huge part of my high school, and something I saw a lot today. A lot of people were freaking out, and it was something that I could just see in people's eyes. I could see the fear, And I kind of want to mention that, and I'll get into maybe why they were feeling that fear of failure in a moment's time. But anyways, I already kind of ate into my normal, regular introduction time, doing a really smooth introduction. So I'm just going to briefly do a little bit of a quick hello. I hope everyone is doing well today. Usually I talk about what book I'm reading, but to be quite honest, I'm not really reading right now. Again, I'm annotating a book for English, and I should probably work on that after I record this podcast episode. So, I definitely have not been reading as much as I should be. That is really on me. But I have realized that my next few weeks coming up, the last second half of second semester, is going to be a hard one for me. I have, every single day after school, I'm staying late, except for Fridays, because at my school we go home early on Fridays. We have an early bus and late bus, and we go home early bus on Fridays every single week. So Monday through Thursday, I'm late bus all the way until the end of the school year, which is a lot of time, right? And 2 out of those 4 days I'm playing rugby. This week I'm playing 3 of those 4 days, because next week I have my club that I have for the grades 5s and 6s in my school, and Tuesdays I have one grade, Thursdays I have the other grade, so then I'm also playing rugby this semester. So I kind of made it really difficult for myself, but I am really saying that because if I ever sound really run down in these episodes, which I hope I don't, I think my speaking voice is awake enough usually, it's probably because I've had a really busy week, and I will have a really busy week for a very long time. And I think I'm realizing right now in grade 10, especially with everything that I've committed myself to doing, I've realized that I will never rest until I'm dead at this rate. And I say that obviously in a joking way, but I also say that in a way that, like, yes, I'm probably not going to have a free week. But that's the way I like to keep it, and don't worry, the podcast is not going away. We're also on episode 13, which I also wanted to mention, which is so funny, and I'm saying this at 9:13. That was a weird coincidence. But I wanted to mention that because today's episode is the fear of failure. Again, as I already said before. But the interesting part about this is because we're recording this at number 13, and it is very well known that the number 13 is kind of one of those numbers that, it's like the devil's number in some people's eyes. It's very bad luck. So I guess it's kind of funny I'm talking about failure, this kind of bad luck thing going on. It's at this episode. So I think this is a very fitting episode. But a little bit brief introduction again, even though I have talked a lot already. I do want to say the 3 main things we're going to talk about. I'm probably going to go off topic a lot, as I already have, so this episode's very chill, obviously. But the first one I really do want to talk about for, like, probably 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long it takes me, is innate human nature. So, like, why we fear these things, as well as, like, phobia, which is the fear of failure, like the actual diagnosable fear of failure, which a lot of people have, but also a lot of people might just have, like, fear of failure, so a few different things. So I'll get into that. As well, I'm just going to kind of sit on my soapbox, as I always say, and I'm just going to talk about a few different things about how to get rid of failure, the fear of failure, maybe why we feel these things, and also the reason why it is unreasonable to feel these things. So I'm going to get into all of that. I am a trustworthy resource, guys, don't worry. And of course, I will be looking at articles today for the first little bit. So let's just get right into it. First, I want to talk about innate human nature and why this is innate. So, okay, usually whenever I talk about anything, I always revisit evolution. Evolution is the starting point of life, and I have an episode about Charles Darwin a few episodes ago. I don't remember what it's called, but you guys should go check that out if you want to learn more about evolution in that regard. Or I think it's called Introduction to Evolution, because I didn't really dive too deep into it, because I wanted to save that. I was like, what if I want to do it again? So I decided that would be a better idea. Anyways, so I always like to look back at evolution, because evolution is really what has driven our species to do the things that we do. I think, personally, and I think we can I think most people could agree, almost every single thing that we do in our daily lives reverts back to some sort of evolution or some sort of human nature trait. And the way I see human nature trait is a trait that we have for survival of the fittest, right? Evolution 101. And a lot of the reason we need to survive so we can make babies and that our humans can live, right? And that's the evolution aspect of it. We've been able to evolve as a species because we've been able to survive time and time again and not die out as a species. So a lot of the different triggers we may have, a lot of the different things that we may experience in our daily lives that happen to us and the way we react to these things really can be driven back to evolution. It can be driven back to what makes us human, and as well as survival, because at the end of the day we are technically still animals. Yes, we're humans. Yes, we have a conscience. Yes, we do all these different things that make us human, and maybe we're not the same as a farm animal, but we are still genetically animals. And that really does play a factor into how we think and how we behave. And it is a really weird thing to think about, but really we are evolution, and we are that background. So, of course, fear is just kind of, just even more this. So the article I have here is from Scientific American from 2019. It will be linked, of course. And it is called On the Nature of Fear. So talking about, how and why it is natural. So, of course, this is kind of like any good science, has been a debate time and time again. And this article talks about, how it's been playing out in neuroscience. Has a very long history, and as well it really mentions how it is recently reignited by Joseph Ledoux. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Apologize if I do not. Who proposed that we should not only redefine fear, but also change the way we experimentally investigate this emotion. Because again, fear, in some way, is still an emotion. If you ever saw Inside Out, fear was one of those emotions. So it still is, technically, emotions. So, Ledoux actually argues a point that I said, in a way. He argues such complex states of the human brain could not be studied in animals. Instead, he proposes that defensive survival circuits, in quotes, that underlie defensive behaviors can be the focus of research in animals. So these are the hardwired circuits are proposed to be orthological to subjective fears that presumably involve higher order circuits. But they can modulate but do not determine the emotion. So, kind of looking at this at a different way, and Ledoux says, the way we have looked at this before doesn't make sense, because we are more, we are more evolved than, our simple amphibian or mammal that we come across on the street. So that's kind of what he says. Obviously, I'm not an expert in the field, well, Ledoux is, but I definitely think that yes, maybe we can't study animals the same way we study ourselves, but a lot of the time the different triggers that we happen does happen at some point, because of our evolution, and a lot of the reasons why we have evolved in the certain way that we have is because of our environment and all these different things. So, an equally provocative, yes, that was the right word, theory is Lisa Feldman Barrett's theory of constructive emotion, which proposes that the human brain constructs instances of fear as a consequence of predicting and inferring the cause of upcoming sensory inputs from the body. So the examples that they give here is introspective and somosensory inputs. And the world, exteroceptive inputs is the example, so outside inputs. Barrett proposes that a brain is continually projecting itself forward in time, predicting skeletal or visceral changes, and inferring the sensory changes that will result from these motor actions. Probably most controversial about Barrett's theory is that it proposes that fear, like other emotion categories, does not have a hardwired neurocognitive profile. but is a part of a dynamic system in which prediction signals are understood as ADHOC, abstract categories, example, again and again. So, really what we're talking about here is that innate fear, why we even fear things in general. So that's a little bit of, I guess, of a background, a little bit of an abstract about some ideas about how we experience fear. So one person says, we always like to think forward in time, which I think really does relate with the fear of failure, right? When we're fearing something that's going to happen forward in time, and we fear, oh, maybe I won't get into school, oh, maybe this will happen, oh, maybe this. You're anticipating something that hasn't even happened yet, and you're fearing that's going to happen based on things that could happen right now. So it's like that domino effect, right? You fear that if I get this bad grade now, I'm never going to get to a university, right? I'm never going to go anywhere in life, and then I'm never going to be wealthy, or I'm going to be homeless, right? That's like that, jumping to conclusions in a way. But it's definitely something that people experience. And that kind of fear aspect of that neurological side is really effective. This article also has a lot of other professionals talk. And talk about a lot about fear and nature. And it's definitely something that I could read this whole article just on this podcast and pick at it. But I'm not going to. I did the first 2 paragraphs. So I would definitely recommend this on the Nature of Fear article by Scientific American, which I will link, of course. The next things that I'm leaving out are just kind of frequently asked questions about fear. And we're not exactly diving into fear itself, but we're diving into the fear of failure. So I don't really want to dive into that and, get into that whole nitty-gritty aspect of it. Because personally, I don't see a point in talking about that if, we're going to get off track and we're not going to talk about the actual topic today, which is a fear of failure instead. So sorry. Okay, so, this current article out of Kentucky Counseling Center, so this one is talking about, okay, I'm going to hopefully pronounce this right, but bear with me here. Phobia, which is, I'm going to spell it out for you. It's ATYCHI phobia, if you want to look it up. It's a fear of failure. If you just look it up, it'll come up. So, this article talks about how it's often normal to feel scared or have doubts when you're about to try something new. The examples they give is committing to a relationship, engaging in unusual situations that you're not accustomed to, etc. But fear is a natural human being emotion that signals you to be cautious of what you're doing. So we kind of going to go back to that evolution aspect before. We don't need to get into the nitpicking aspect of why we fear, but I do want to give a little bit of maybe a brief overview. Fear is a good thing. So if you want to think about this in a way, let's say you were a caveman and you are trying to get food and water and help your family, right? What's going to happen is you're going to come across predators. And these predators could kill you, which means it could kill the future of your whole species. So we don't want you just running around in the forest, not cautious of anything, and then a bear come out of nowhere and, eat you, right? A little dramatic, but it's true. You don't want that. So as a human species, you want to have that fear. Because if you are fearful of something, you are going to be cautious when you're around. So I'm personally kind of scared of snakes. So if a snake is around and I see it, I'll probably run the other way. And that again kind of goes into our flight or fight scenario, where we will either run away from the situation or leave the situation, or we will fight the situation head on. And that kind of again goes more, I'm so sorry for yawning. That kind of again goes more into fear in and of itself rather than the fear of failure. So I won't add too much onto that point. But fear in general really is a human response nature to survive. Without fear, without this little buzzing alarm in our head, we wouldn't run away from things, right? If there wasn't a little buzz in our ear that said, hey, maybe don't approach that big fluffy bear over there that could eat you, right? We, as a human species, we would all be alive. And of course, other animals have these survival techniques, and I'm sure they experience some sort of failure, maybe not the ones we experience in, obviously school-wise and all these other things, but they experience some sort of failure that, kind of debilitates them and, makes them, become this way. So, this fear of failure is something that, is also innate. Because if you fail at something, survival-wise, it could mean death. And a lot of the times, when we have a fear, it usually means in our head we're thinking this could mean a death. Fear of clowns, killer clowns, death. Fear of snakes and spiders, like my own. I don't know, maybe I think they're dangerous, poisonous, I don't know, venomous, again, death. So a lot of the times we have these initial responses so we don't die and so we can, fertilize the next generation and create, more babies and more humans and keep on living. So, it is very normal for us to have failure, but it can come to a point where it's not normal. And this is the arachnophobia aspect of it. So in this article, it kind of says, for some people, fear keeps them focused. However, if you have the fear of failure and it holds you back from achieving your best self, this may have developed into a phobia. Having a fear of failure is universally recognized as a phobia. It is defined as an irrational feeling or fear of a certain object or situation. So the questions they can ask, is like, do you think you have the fear of failure? Arachnophobia is real. So read farther. Let's do that. So the highlighted point that I have here is, I'm going to quote it again. Irrational fear of failure could be caused by a traumatic event that a person had experienced before. This traumatic experience can make a person doubt one's abilities and believes that they are not good enough to try new things. This makes sense. Let's say, this is kind of an extreme example again, but, a lot of people who were in the war, who were in these really big time wars, who were fighting day in, day out, who could not see their family, who had all these things going on that were absolutely horrible. Of course they're going to fear, well, maybe they'll fear death more, but of course there would be some sort of maybe arachnophobia or, obviously a lot of PTSD. But there's a lot of different moving parts and different elements that would happen when something like that happens, right? Especially maybe if you saw one of your friends die in war, you would be very afraid. I'm so sorry for yawning every other minute, but, this, and the severe cases, of course, it means people cannot function, and that, really happens. But, again, they mention how failure is a stepping stone for achievement, right? It helps you learn from your mistakes and makes you move past something and create a better version of yourself. So, they mention how rising from failure is a sign of progress. You are learning to take new steps in achieving your dreams. So the fear of failure may have developed during childhood or a certain point in life where embarrassment, bullying, or trauma was experienced due to failing at something. Again, this makes complete sense. A lot of the times, the things that we do in life result from childhood trauma. And, if you probably heard a therapist ever talk, they probably ask you a lot about your childhood. And that's because a lot of things happen in your childhood that, obviously really affect your future life and make you, do things or think things that are, maybe might have been different if you didn't experience something like that. So, of course, this condition can be positive or negative, depending how you manage it, really like anything else. So, some examples, some risks they say about having this really crazy fear of failure is, if a perfectionist is failing at something, that's important consequences. This could really affect, their life, their job. Again, there could be imprints from childhood experience, traumatic event, again. And then, if you really worry about self-perception and how other people see you, that kind of goes hand in hand with the fear of failure or arachnophobia. So they give some, symptoms of this condition. Again, I'm really not going to focus too heavily on this, so if you want to go read that, you can read it in the bio of this episode. It is called Kentucky Counseling Center, and I will name it probably just arachnophobia, so you can go watch that. Okay, moving on. I want to look at other people's responses of how to overcome the fear of failure. But I also kind of just want to sit on my soapbox for a few moments and talk about it. But maybe I'll get a little bit more into what the fear of failure is from this other article called Very Well Mind. So, this is the highlighted point here. The fear of failure, which is sometimes referred to as technophobia, is an irrational and present fear of failing. Sometimes this fear might emerge in response to a specific situation. In other cases, it might be related to another mental health condition as anxiety or depression. A lot of the times, mental health conditions... I'm so sorry. I can't believe I keep yawning. A lot of the time, mental health conditions can be coupled together in a way, because a lot of the times these symptoms and events kind of, mix in together, and they have very similar, symptoms that may make it that, these go down that, become that way. So, kind of with that being said, this fear of failure really can just result from anything, and, of course, this might be an example, is childhood trauma, characteristics, mental health, all these different things. So, when we're looking at the fear of failure, really we've been looking at the really extreme examples, but I kind of just want to say, why do we fear failure? Because I had a bunch of articles up here, but I don't feel like there's enough to talk about just this arachnophobia. I think that, let me see. So this article is by The Atlantic, and it says, "Go ahead and fail. Perfectionism can make you miserable. Here's how to muster the courage to mess up." Okay, this is a beautiful article. I already love it. It's by The Atlantic. I will obviously link it. So, this is in a point of view of someone who says, of course, I've always feared failure, and a lot of the times they mention that how the fear of failure really is about, or usually about, how these unknown outcomes. So, you're in a tunnel and you can't see the end. The unknown is what scares you. What if there's a killer clown? What if there's death near? What if there is a utopia? Who knows, right? And that fear makes people anxious, it makes them worried, and it makes them worried that if they fail, a lot of these bad things could happen. Again, that other domino effect, right? I might be afraid to give a presentation for my boss, because if I fail, I won't get a promotion with clear implications for my career, is the example that this writer has given. So she also mentions, I believe it's a she, Arthur, no, a he. He also mentions how researchers have also found that people who strongly fear failure have a composite of 2 personality characteristics, and I think this is really, really big. So listen in, these 2 characteristics. 1, low achievement orientation. So this is, they don't really take much pleasure from accomplishments and meeting goals. And 2, high test anxiety, a fear of not performing well at a crucial moment. So in other words, they're motivated less by the possibility of winning and gaining something of value, and more by their anxiety about possibility of messing up. This is some of the same personality traits that drive perfectionism, and can show up in low achievers and high achievers alike. So this doesn't just affect people who you might, in a sense, call lazy, quote unquote. It can also affect people who are really successful. And, this failure is a spectrum. And people worrying about failure is also a spectrum. So again, they also mentioned how perfectionism and the fear of failure kind of go hand in hand. They lead you to believe that success isn't about doing something good, but about not doing something bad. So if you suffer from the fear of failure, you'll likely know exactly what this person means. Where you're striving for success should be an exciting journey to an amazing destination, but, instead it feels like an exhausting slog, and, you're kind of annoyed there. So, that kind of drives the articles I had, and I think that transitions perfectly into me talking. So, I wanted to really talk about the fear of failure. I explained, why we have innate fears in general, why failure is one of those big innate fears, survival, right, is a huge part of it, and evolution comes into play when we're thinking. But I think failure in general, to me, of course can be worrying, but I think it is one of the most harmful things that you can do to yourself. Fearing something before it happens is like it happening twice. And I don't remember exactly who said that, and I am paraphrasing a bunch, but really, in essence, that quote, who I cannot remember who it's from, so if you know, let me know. But, if you worry about the consequences of something bad happening, it's just going to happen to you twice. And that's just such a big, powerful quote, and I really want you guys to soak that in. Because, to me, that really describes what the fear of failure is, or just failure in general, right? When you are worrying about something happening, and you are worried about this consequence, and you come up with the worst possible excuse ever, and then it happens, you're only doing it to yourself twice. And if it doesn't happen and everything turns out fine, well, you just experience that moment when you didn't have to. So either way, having this fear of failure is not good for anybody. And it really just worries you more. Not to say that you should be this chill, mellow attitude and do nothing with your life. That's not what I'm saying. I'm a very high achiever personally, and I know that. And for me, success drives a lot of what I do. But I can't say that I'm innately scared to fail at everything I do. In my mind, and how I picture it, and I think what's important to picture, is that when you are thinking about something, or when you are thinking about, doing a project, right? Like, let's say this podcast, right? I could have been worried that I was, 1, going to be bullied. 2, that I was going to be embarrassed for having these podcast episodes up. 3, that I would bomb and I would lose a bunch of money somehow. 4, maybe I'd never make it, right? Right. These different fears are so irrational. Because 1, you should not care what other people think, and that should not drive you to do things. So, fearing about what other people will think is stupid. Because you know what? The only person who should really care about you is yourself. You should be your number 1 fan, and you should really only care about what you think. And if you are doing something that you love and something that you know will make an impact on this earth, go for it. No matter how old you are, no matter who your friends are, who cares, right? These people are insignificant to you. And something, I'll probably talk about this in another episode. But I think putting people on pedestals, no matter who they are, it could be an actor, an actress, a billionaire, it could be your next door neighbor. Putting anybody on a pedestal is the dumbest thing you could do in life as well. Maybe not the dumbest, but it is one of the worst things you can do for yourself. Because when you are putting people on pedestals, you're acting like they are better than you, but they are not. Every single person is human. No matter their successes, no matter what they've done with their life, everybody is human. We are all on an equal playing field. Maybe not an equal playing field, but we are all equal. We are all human and we are all equal beings. So when you put that mental note forward where you think, oh, this person who's better than me is going to, judge me, that is just a horrible way to look at it. So I do want to mention that. As well, when we are fearing failure, we're fearing the unknown, as this article mentions, the Atlantis actually. When we fear the unknown, we fear things that haven't even happened, which I think is so silly as well. If you're walking in a forest and you're worried that a bunch of bears are going to come out, but the forest is like small and you can see the town and it's all fine, why are you worrying about the bears, right? Obviously don't be a blind, naive optimist, but also don't be the super dark pessimist that's always worried that they're going to fail at everything at a super high achieving level, right? Because really, when we fear things, and when we worry about failure to this degree, it only backfires on us. It only makes it worse. Because now, you're not only putting, out there in your mind that, oh, people could judge me, oh, this, oh, that. Now you're putting in your mind that this could go very bad. And when you are thinking something's going to go very bad, you're probably going to do very bad on it because you keep thinking that you're going to do very bad. So, when you look at it through this lens, right, when you think about it this way, having that fear in and of itself, again, is not smart. It's very stupid. Because it's not like it's going to happen. You are the controller of your destiny. You are the controller of your future and how you want your life to look and what you want to do on this planet. So failure is really just an obstacle and is really just a learning stepping stone. This is something we learned as young children, but I don't think it's reiterated enough, right? Failure. If you fail at something, it is only an opportunity to rise from that failure. It is only an opportunity to get better and to be a better person and to be more successful and to learn from that mistake and to do better in the future. Yeah, sure, I've gotten bad marks on tests in my mind, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, sure, this has happened to me. But what I have done in those moments is, yes, maybe I was obsessed. Maybe I cried. Who knows? But what I didn't do is I didn't give up. I used that and I said, you know what? It's fine. What happened. We're going to move forward and we are going to improve and we're going to learn from these mistakes and not make these mistakes again, because now we know what we did and learning is a part of that, right? When we look at school, a lot of people fear failure so much. They're so scared that you're going to fail. But you're at school to learn. You have to remember that. It's not a game, right? It's not a game of who gets the highest points in the grade. It is not that. It is a game to learn. Because I'm sure half the people who you talk to have super high grades probably didn't learn a thing. And I would agree with that point too, because I get pretty high grades. And a lot of the times, it's just memorization and getting through the test and getting a good grade. But that's not learning. Learning is a process. Learning is diving deep into a subject and enthralling yourself into that subject and really digging into something and understanding a concept and bringing, and a part of learning and a lot of learning is failure, right? Like learning a language, you are going to fail a lot. You're going to mess up a lot of words. You are not going to learn the language very quickly. But if you keep worrying about that failure and if you give up right away, you are never going to be a bilingual person, a trilingual person. You're not going to be able to speak another language. So when we have these fears, they are very irrational usually. Because if we think about it, getting a bad mark on a test will not literally kill us, right? We have this fear of failure in general, again, is because of that innate evolution. So failing a test, having a bad situation at home, maybe getting broken up with, not getting into university, these are not things that are going to kill you. Yeah, maybe they will affect your life in a negative or positive way, but they are not going to kill you. So if you're an outsider looking on the inside, right? If you were an alien species and you looked how humans acted over worrying about things that haven't even happened, and they would probably laugh right in our faces and say, why are you worried? It has not happened. Live in the moment. And that is so important to do. I'm a person that loves to look forward into the future, and that is something that I do all the time. I look forward and I plan goals and I do things and I make sure I do them well and thoroughly. But I've also learned that yes, when I do fail at something, right, some of these podcast episodes I realize are kind of duds, right? Some of them maybe to me suck. The one episode that I thought was the worst one has done the best in performance so far based on how many weeks it's been out. So, sometimes things just happen and you don't know, but you can't worry about things until you try. And worrying about failure is really a time waster. It's a time waster in your day. It's a time waster on your mental health and on your mental well-being. And it really is just going to affect you in a more negative way than really anything else. I also really agree with this article and, how failure may drive other things, as I mentioned, right, that low achievement orientation as well as high test anxiety. I know a lot of people get really high test anxiety, but let me tell you, it's just going to be worse if you're more stressed. Take it easy, take a deep breath in and out. You're going to take the test, you're going to look it over, you're going to keep working on it until the time's over, you're going to hand it in, and then you're going to wait till the test is marked. And once the test is marked, you can deal with that issue, right? There is no reason to be worried about something when it hasn't even happened. You can't be worried that you failed a test when you haven't even gotten the mark back, because who knows? Maybe you knew more than you thought you did. And then maybe if you do fail the test, you gotta study more next time, and that's a great learning lesson. So for me, I know personally that failure is a necessary part of life, and I think it's one of the best parts of my life. I love to fail at things, and I think this is such a funny sentence to say, but I do. I love to fail at things. I love getting rejections. The reason why is because I don't want my ego just to be lifted and lifted and lifted and do everything amazing and everything be a great time. I really do want to fail at things because I know truly that the only way you can really, really, really learn is from your own experiences, and the only way you can really, really learn from those experiences is if you do something wrong. Because if you're perfect at something, you're probably a professional and you're not learning something really from the beginning. So that's another really main point. And maybe I'll sit on my soapbox a little bit more and talk about how maybe you can overcome failure worrying about things. First off, I would say is just take a deep breath. Now put it in big picture perspective. Don't go on rambling saying, if I fail this test, I'm never going to go to this university. No! You're jumping to conclusions way too fast. Take it easy. You take a deep breath and you say, I'm going to do amazing on this test. You're going to write the test. If you do amazing on the test, great. If you don't, great. Now you just learned, maybe you should study more. Maybe you should do this. Maybe you'll learn your studying techniques. And you will really optimize yourself better for the future. Because failure is not the end, guys. Failure is not something that is going to kill us. Because that is why we usually are worried about these things. But failure is going to be something that cripples us if we don't take the time to recognize what it is for what it is. And if we don't, realize that, maybe I shouldn't fear this. Because I am much more than my failures. But of course, people look at your successes usually. But they don't see all those failures by the curtain, right? I look at Elon Musk and say, oh, he's so wealthy. But I don't see all the mistakes he's had in the background. And he's had a lot of mistakes. He's had a lot of rocket ship crashes and a lot of money out of the drain. But look, he's the richest man in the world now. So, of course, an extreme example. But I say it as extreme examples to really get the point home. Because failure is not the end at the end of the day. It is only a driving force. So first off, obviously, look at failure as a driving force in your life. Look at it as something as a positive rather than a negative. Look at it and say, you know what? I failed at this, and you know what? I'm going to do so much better next time, and I know exactly what I'm going to do. As well, if you do fail at something and you can't do better next time, what if there isn't a next time? Well, then you know what? It wasn't meant for you. That thing was not meant for you. Maybe you didn't try hard. Maybe this. Maybe that. Whatever. But you know what? You failed at it, and that is absolutely fine. You can get back up on your feet, wipe your knees, get rid of those bruises, and you know what? We're all a little bit tattered up. We all have these immense failures, and we have these things that drive our lives that change the way we look at things, the way we see the world, and our failures really do shape us. So I think as well that we should, really, really look at it in that way and not over-analyze everything as well. That kind of goes to my point. Don't over-analyze everything. Don't make everything such a big deal when it's not, right? Like my literacy test. Yeah, okay, I needed to graduate, but it's really not that big of a deal because I know personally that I will pass the test. And it's not being cocky, it's being confident and knowing who I am and knowing what skills I bring to the table. And I know that to graduate, to get that literacy test, I will do it and I will pass. And that's it. That's at the end of the day, that is something I need to do. And I'm not worried about that failure. I'm not going to say in my head, oh, what if I don't get a 75? Well, then you know what? If I didn't get a 75, I would do it next year, and then I would do it the year after, and keep going until I graduate high school. So really, that's kind of the other, driving point is perseverance as well with failure, right? When you do fall down, keep getting up and up and up and up, and keep persevering through your life. It does seem like life is long. It's also very short, though. So take everything head on. And when you are worried about failure, put it into perspective and look at big picture again, as I mentioned. So, put it into its place, right? Look at the domino effect. All these dominoes are probably not going to fall because of one little thing. Maybe you did a bigger thing, but maybe the bigger dominoes won't fall because, again, it won't do it because it's not, it's not going to happen because you are overthinking things too much. So I also think a lot of this has to do with people overthinking the way they look at things and overthinking, what is going on and all of that. So yeah, I really just think those are really big points about facing failure and taking it head on. I think you should take it head on. I know when I apply to university, I'll probably get an objection from a lot of places. You know what? I will accept it. And I will go where I am meant to go. And that is really just the biggest part of life, is realizing your mistakes, realizing your failures, getting back up for them, and really the big part is learning from those mistakes. Because the only way that you can improve and not make those failures or mistakes again is to learn from it. So I think that's another big part, because people fear failure. They said, last time I did really bad on the test, I'm going to do horrible this time. Well, no, maybe you won't, but if maybe you will, but if you learned from your mistakes and you properly worked on what you were bad at, then you probably would do much better. And if you change that attitude a little bit, you probably wouldn't be doing as bad. So that's another big thing, right? That we have to realize this, and we have to realize that, these are the things that affects us. And, failure, yes, is an innate human nature. It is something that is ingrained into us. But we also have to realize that we aren't being chased by bears. We are not being chased by lions or tigers, oh my. When we face these fears of failure, they're usually so insignificant, right? Going up for that public speech will not kill you. Taking that test will not kill you. Even though it may feel like it, it will not kill you. So do everything fearlessly and just go after it. If you know you want to do something in your life, take it head on, go after it, and, become that person who does these things and does not fear what could happen, but only worries about what will happen when it happens. Again, the main point is when it happens, because don't jump to conclusions either way. Don't jump to amazing solutions, and don't jump to negative solutions right away. So as well, in this article, they mention how focusing on the present is important, and I totally agree with this. When you can focus on where you are right now, you won't really worry about what your weird future predictions are. You will realize that, this is only now, and this moment will be passing. Visualize courage is the other thing they example. So I think this is a really interesting one. It's almost like manifesting how you'll react. So the example they give again is, public speaking. If you visualize in your head, maybe the day before, that you are going to be super confident in your own voice, you're a super confident speaker, and you do it amazing, maybe you will refer to that in your memory bank and almost feel like it is a part of you, and you will fear less of that failure. There's a few other points here in the article, and I think that's about all I really want to give. But, I think that, failure really is a tried and true. Because sometimes you aren't meant to do something, right? There's been projects that I have worked on that I have not meant to fulfill. And I realized that. And I realized, I think this project is not meant for me. Let's do this another time. So, failure is a very good thing, I personally think. Yeah, in the moment it may be really, really, really crappy. But usually it's for the better. Usually it's some sort of teaching moment for yourself. And usually you can end up fixing that failure. And really, I think failure, no matter what the failure is, and no matter what degree it is one of the most important things that you can utilize in your life. If you know how to utilize failure and not fear failure every time you end up doing something, you will be one of the most powerful humans on this earth. And you will really have a lot of, judge to give other people. So to kind of wrap up this episode up, because we were almost out of time, I usually near an hour, but I did kind of sit on my soapbox for a little bit. I could talk about this for a very long time, but I do just want to kind of wrap this up. So definitely when you are looking at failure, focus on three main things. 1, put it into context. Realize where you are right now in your life and look at the present moment. 2, look at the bigger picture. This kind of relates to the next point. But look at the domino effect. Don't look at an unrealistic domino effect. Really realize that, this future scenario I'm creating is probably not true. Let me focus on what I am doing currently and right now. And 3, when you do fail, because you will fail a lot, take it in with open arms. Be excited to fail. You may seem weird, but be super happy. Jump up and be ecstatic, because you are learning. And now you can actively say, when you do fail at something, that I am learning and I am becoming a better version of myself. And by doing this and by failing at these things, I am learning. I am truly learning as a person, and I am going to learn from these mistakes, and I'm going to become better for it, and I'm going to be amazing. So again, my points were these 3 points. I want to reiterate this because I think these are really important and things that I have used, probably subconsciously, but I think these are great tips. 1, put it in reality. Stay in the moment. Realize, where you are in life and all of that. 2, put it in the bigger picture. Realize the domino effect and realize that your solution for this is probably not realistic at all. And 3, when you do fail, and you will fail a lot, take it in open arms and be even more excited for your failures than your successes. I've seen so many people talk about their lives. Ray Dalio was a huge one for me. He's a billionaire, and he talks about failure, and he said, you know what? I know more of my failures in my life than I know my successes. That's again paraphrasing that. But he said, you know, I remember my failures more prominently than my successes, and there's a reason for that, and that's because I learned from that. Because you don't learn from your successes, because you know what you did. When you succeed at something, you did it right. But you will remember all those times that you failed and needed to do better, and that will only make you a better person, it will only make you a better human being, and it will only make you more successful. So hopefully those 3 points will be able to be taken out through your whole life. And guys, I really just hope you enjoyed today's episode. I definitely enjoyed me sitting here talking to you about failure and fear of failure. I think this is such an important topic, a topic that we need to open up more and more and get people used to talking about failure and used to dealing with their own failures, because failure is a part of life, and I think is one of the most important parts of life. And I personally know, for me, I take it in with open arms, and I hug it, and I say thank you, thank you, thank you, and I am going to do amazing, and I am just going to do even better. So if you guys enjoyed today's episode, go listen to any of the other 12 episodes that are currently out. If you're listening to this in the future of when this is posted and there's more episodes out, go listen to those. And as well, if you ever want updates on episodes and what's going on, go follow my social media, and please connect as well on social media. I don't mention this a lot, but if you want to give me ideas for episodes and things you might want to hear me talk about, go ahead and just DM me on Instagram, on Twitter, wherever you can find me. Just message me and say, hey Ava, talk about this. I'd love to hear about it. So do that. As well, I only have 3 articles today, but they will be linked in the bio of today's episode. Okay, so connect. My Instagram is ever.changingworld. Again, ever.changingworld. It is the show name. My Twitter is everchangingwor. Again, everchangingwor. The website is shows.acast.com/ever-changing-world. Again, shows.acast.com/ever-changing-world. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in today. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Take on all of those failures head on, and I will see you next week for another amazing episode. Have a wonderful day, everybody.